What up, what up? This is your boy Checo.
This is your boy Noe. What up?
And this is Compas Unfiltered. Thank you guys for listening, for watching. Make sure you guys follow all of our social media, subscribe and like.
And make sure you go rate us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Make sure you drop a comment on YouTube. Like and subscribe.
Yes, sir. Enjoy the episode.
Yeah. So you're going next year?
Hell yeah! And I did VIP this year. I think next year I'm gonna do platinum.
Oh shit!
Yeah, because
how much was that? Can I ask?
Yeah, of course. So GA was like $350 for the 2-day pass, around there. VIP was $700 for the 2 days, and platinum is like $1,300 a person. But this is why I want to do platinum, because we were VIP, but we ended up, because we drink, like we ended up spending what we
that amount anyways.
Exactly. On food and drink. So I'm just like, why are we?
Might as well.
And I don't really want to sneak in stuff because, I don't know, it's too risky, I feel like. You know, it was cool though, because a lot of workers, they actually dug bottles under the ground for their friends. And they would tell them where the bottles were. So I'm like, that's smart.
I saw that though.
I saw that. They've been doing that, right?
Yeah,
that's cool.
I don't know where it started, but I did see it for like Lollapalooza.
Yeah,
and other festivals.
Yeah, so it's a thing. This is my first festival like that. So,
was there like a specific artist that you wanted to see?
Oh my god!
And didn't disappoint?
Oh my god, no! I love reggaeton. That's my favorite music. I love reggaeton. I'm a huge fan of reggaeton. My ultimate favorites are Joel y Randy. Randy didn't show up though because he missed his flight. But yeah, I wanted to see all of them. El Alfa, I love them both too. So El Alfa was really good. Joel y Randy, Jay Cortez, all of them were there. Like you have to. Mike Towers. I've been wanting to see Mike Towers.
I heard he did really fucking good.
No, Winston and Yandel.
I heard that
was the best. That's my favorite part of the whole festival.
Did you go to day 2? I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
So I heard Wisin and Yandel did better than J Balvin, because J Balvin closed out on Sunday.
He seemed, but something's wrong with him because he canceled his tour. No, I think there's something going on in his life.
Oh, okay.
He got beef with Cristian Nodal, dog. That's what's got him worried.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm just
and also, Calle 13, is that? Calle 13.
Yeah.
Like
they didn't show up?
No, Calle 13 and J
they got
Balvin
beef too?
hate each other. There's a lot of YouTube
What was that
videos
dude that went hard on him on the freestyle, dude, and just murdered him?
It was
Calle 13 guy?
Calle 13.
Oh, yeah, he went hard, bro.
I mean, there's a lot of reason to do that because J Balvin is Colombian, right? He's a white Colombian. So, like, there's a lot of criticism in the reggaeton world about lighter-skinned, like, Latin American people that appropriate or are just, like, getting really famous and really rich off reggaeton when its roots are, like, Panamanian, black, Tego Calderon.
That was a beast.
Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, it's understandable stuff, but I don't know why Calle 13 is talking because he's also very light-skinned.
I think there's probably some more beef behind there, though. But Cristian Nodal, I just saw an Instagram post.
They got beef?
Yeah, they got beef too, bro. And they look kind of similar now because that fool's got tattoos on his face, blonde hair. And I'm like, what is going on, bro?
It's got to be personal, though.
But Wisin y Yandel, Ben had the game on lock, though. Like, and I'm not like a huge reggaeton fan, bro, but them fools were on top of their game for years, bro.
Yeah, but it's definitely different, like a live performances.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I just think they've been doing it for so long that they would be beasts coming in to the, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but Mike Towers is a beast too.
Mike Towers is badass.
And I'm not a huge fan of reggaeton like that. Like,
I'm
a
diehard.
Yeah. I listen to songs on radio, you know?
Yeah, Mike Towers is amazing. Raul Alejandro I love, but he wasn't there. He had his separate concert. Bad Bunny, of course, is already too
big
there to... We'll see. Maybe they'll bring him next year.
Do you like that type of reggaeton too? Like the Bad Bunny that you can't really understand what they're saying?
I like all of it from the beginning to now. Yeah, I like all of it.
It's gone through some big changes, bro.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
What did you feel about like when they brought the regional?
Oh, I love that too. I love all of that. Although I feel like I fell off a little bit because of pandemic. Like before pandemic, I was always like, I went to El Fantasmas concert. Like I love regional Mexican. I love tamborazo. Like that's my thing too. But I feel like ever since pandemic, like I haven't gone out a lot anymore with regional Mexican stuff.
Yeah.
Like perreo, I listen to at home. You know,
that's regular.
That's what I exercise to. That's what I listen to. Pero Yeah. So, but the regional Mexican was a really nice touch. Like they brought them in, especially Fuerza Regida. Like, oh my God, they did so
They
good.
snap.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it wasn't too much, right? Because it was only one artist. So
no,
it's like
Cano and Fuerza Regida. So Natiel Cano and they won.
Nathaniel Cano?
Yeah. You see, you don't even know his name.
You were there.
Nathaniel. That's cute. Yeah, I love corridos. I named my son Remy after Remy Valenzuela.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. Everybody's like, you name Remy after Remy Martin? I'm like, no, I don't even drink that.
Do you mind me asking where are your parents from?
My dad was born in Guerrero and my mom's from Morelos.
Okay.
So we're more like southern. We're not like the northern.
No, because you said Tamborazo. You're like, that's my thing. That's a Zacatecas thing. So I was like, hold on, let me check in. See where we're from.
It's fucking filled with Zacatecas. So all my friends that I grew up with were
That's little mini Zacatecas right there.
Exactly.
Shout out everybody in Addison.
Yeah.
You see? Well, we're going to take this time to introduce our guest today. I know people have probably been listening and are like, who's talking? What's going on? Mm-hmm. So, Cindy, welcome to Compas Unfiltered. Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Oh, there's a shirt and everything. I want one of those eventually.
Well, I know we're kind of like limited on time, so we're just going to get right into it. And I think the reason why I brought you on and I told you about was the mass shooting that happened recently in Texas. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Uvalde, Texas. So I wanted to touch on that. I guess first of all, it's like, what was your initial reaction, like to hearing to the shooting?
Yeah.
Like where were you at? And I guess because like at least for myself, it was, I don't know, like 2 p.m., 3 p.m. or something like that in the afternoon. And it was just like another mass shooting. But there was no information out, right? If anyone died or anything like that. But what was going on through your head?
So when I heard about it, I was actually at Target. And I heard about it like 10 minutes after it started. Because I follow a lot of folks on Twitter. Like I'm big on social media. And I don't always post on all the outlets. But I do follow a lot for the reason that I trust people on the ground with news more than I do mainstream media. So I was at Target with my husband. He was like getting some prescription sunglasses or something. And then I saw it and I'm like, oh no. And it was a school. So then I just started like I started, just following everything as it was developing. And for the next 48 hours, I would say I deeply researched everything. And I went on every single social media. And I basically read everything that has to do with anything on that shooting.
On the shooting.
Because I'll tell you because in a minute, but the way that I felt, I thought, and I'm going to be very honest with you, my fear was, what I did first was look up the school. Because you could always look up the demographics of the school. I'm like, okay, this is school in Uvalde, Robb Elementary. I went online and you could look that up, like, what are the demographics? And I saw 90% Latino, right? Probably predominantly Mexican.
Yeah.
And then my heart dropped. I'm like, no, because there was already a mass shooting in Texas that happened. I was like, my first reaction was like, this must be white supremacist related. So that's before they released who the shooter was, right? So I was like, oh no. I'm like, right now there is a huge movement, the MAGA movement, which is very dangerous in that there is that whole, the shooting that happened in Buffalo, which it follows the whole, the replacement theory, which says that particularly Black folks are replacing, white folks, and that white folks are like on the brink of like extinction, and that there's like this purposeful thing happening where there's a replacement, right? So I was like, I wonder if it was connected to that because Buffalo had just happened, and I was like, I wonder if there's going to be like a string of mass shootings connected to that one.
And there kind of has been, right? I mean, I think I heard there's been like 20 mass shootings since the Uvalde one.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. So there has been about 20 more. The one that just happened in, it was in the hospital. That one was not related, according to the mainstream media, it's not related to race. It was like a guy who had this back surgery and was still having back pain after his back surgery and was really upset about it. And so went and murdered the physician that did the surgery, and a lot of other people. But the thing is that, like, so that's when I kind of started thinking deeper about guns, right? It's like, what is it? Once I found out who the shooter was, right? I'm like, okay, the shooter is a Mexican kid.
Yeah.
What is it about like, so not all mass shootings are related to white supremacy. I think that's a big factor, like a big element of it for sure. But for me, this shooting made me see that it is a larger issue around guns. And the one thing I will say is this: I do think that it's still white supremacist culture, and I'll tell you why. Like, I feel like guns, right? This culture around owning guns and wanting guns and having guns, this issue, this even like this culture around private property, is all has its roots in white supremacy. It all has its roots in what dominates the globally right now, which is white supremacy. So like, just because somebody brown or black does something doesn't mean that it's not white supremacist culture. Does that make sense? So like, for example, like what I'm trying to say is like this young person grew up in the United States, which is a society that's dominated by white supremacy, white supremacist culture. Schooling, right? The type of school, the structure of school is all influenced by white supremacist culture. The history this young person lived through, and I don't, and not to take time like talking about this young person, but I do think that that's an important thing to talk about. What led this young person to do what he did, right?
What do you think led him?
Well, and that's what I think. I think that I looked into his family, and from what's available. Obviously, I'm not there, so I'm just gathering like puzzle pieces from what I'm reading. It looks like his mother was a drug addict. It looked like he was being raised by his grandma and his grandpa. And so basically, I think that this young person probably had mental health, for sure had mental health issues, right? For whatever reason, but the resources were not there to get him what he needed to prevent him from getting to the point that he did. And to me, like that, so I identify as an abolitionist in my politics. And that's why for me, that's the most important thing, right? Because a lot of folks want to debate on like surface issues, right? Like, oh, but it's about guns. And it's like, wait, let's go back and look at the core of the issue. Where did it start? What did we fail at? Like, what didn't we see? And what could we have done differently as this young person was growing up, right? So for me, I think this young person probably got infatuated with guns. I heard that, he was obviously abusive to animals, right? All these signs that we know that usually are warning signs, right? This person has these tendencies. And it didn't look like there was any like services, right? It didn't look like this person received any like mental health services, didn't receive any intervention or prevention, right? And so I think this person had a lot of hate in their heart. I think it was a lot of rage. I think there's a lot of entitlement. Like there's this literature that looks at mass shootings, particularly when they're done by white young men, that talks about like entitlement, right? Like, I am entitled to the world. Like, I am entitled to women. Like, women exist in this world for me. They exist to entertain me. They exist for my procreation. And I feel like a lot of times with young men, that's part of it too. It's like, he's like, I'm mad, therefore the world needs to feel my rage. And how can the world feel my rage the hardest? And then he's like, in elementary school,
I mean, I agree as far as like that's probably where everybody felt it and feels it. Because you think about little kids, defenseless, they can't do anything for them, to defend themselves. So I mean, 100% for that.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, compa.
I mean, I was kind of stuck on the whole situation. If just thinking about the mental health issues and the fact that our Latino communities don't really know how to manage that, on top of the fact that if his mother was a drug addict, I feel like it just trickled down, The fact that our parents or their parents never taught them about how to deal with feelings and mental health issues and depression or whatever could be going on, right? I feel like that within itself could have, led to what happened. Without even going into politics and why are they in Uvalde or how they're living or circumstances, without going into that deep of things, just the fact that we don't really know how to deal with mental health issues as much, or like we have a lack of knowledge behind that. So, I mean, I would just, focus on that just within itself, you know what I mean? And what led the guy to do what he did.
Yeah. No, for sure. I feel like that is very true, especially like in the Latino culture. I do think it's getting better. Like I have seen a lot of organizations in different parts of Chicago at least like really fight for mental health stuff. But I do think that you're right in that it could be just like people just kind of brush off the warning signs, right? Oh, he's just being this, or oh, they hello, whatever. Um but like I think that what you said is really important about defenselessness, right? It's like because also what they find with mass shooters is like there is always a hate for women and a hate for children, right? So like that thing goes hand in hand. It's a hate for women first. So when you see somebody like, and this is something that they saw about the shooter, is that he was very disrespectful to his grandmother. He would yell at her verbally, like whatever. Like all of that, when you see those signs of like anger towards women, rage towards women, um, those people like these are warning signs, right? And it's like it sadly globally, like children are the targets a lot of anger and rage. Like not even to be controversial, but like all this chancla culture, they call it, in our own culture of hitting our kids. Why do we hit our kids, right? Why do we take out our anger on our children, right? And I think that there is something deeper, even in chancla culture, around how we treat our children in our society, So I think that it does have to do, it's all connected. And I do feel like that's why it became a target. Same with animals, right? The warning signs. Animals are defenseless creatures, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they say that's kind of like a trait in serial killers, right? I mean, so is this more of like a serial killer type of individual? The fact that he was abusing animals.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, when I heard that his grandma took him out for his birthday, bro, right before he shot her, I mean, that's a different type of person within itself, bro.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
100%.
who would do something like that? Your your grandmother's showing you love, taking you out to lunch or dinner, whatever it was, and then you shoot her right after that. I'm like, this person is literally showing you affection and the best way possible, feeding you. You know what I mean? On your birthday, let's celebrate you.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Yeah.
I was puzzled just by that, bro. I was like, this is a different type of person we're dealing with here.
I'm not trying to excuse him. I'm trying to make excuses for him or trying to like understand him, bro. But I mean, you also don't know the relationship that him and his grandmother had.
Yeah.
What if she did have that like chancla mentality, which we all do, or whatever? You know what I mean? No, I mean
The fact that she brought that up though too, bro. Like, I feel like that chancla culture, bro. That I feel like the way we were brought up wasn't that far from like the right way, dude. Like I look at the way my mom and my dad raised me. Like it wasn't perfect, but they knew how to keep me aligned. You know what I mean? Like now I'm pretty sure that the chancla culture exists in a more extreme way, just like everything else. And then that would just be abuse, right? Yeah. I feel like that's different.
A lot of folks, I feel like, share your perspective and that they feel there's a thin line between discipline and abuse. However, I will say that I also was raised in that. Like my father used physical violence towards me, and it did fuck me up. Like I don't think that I could say that it didn't fuck me up. Like I have PTSD. Like I am a diagnosed PTSD because of the trauma. Starting from the trauma of my father, right? And I don't want to say I love my dad. Me and my dad are like cool as hell right now, right? Yeah. So through years of therapy, I've been in therapy for 7 years or so, I have come to understand like my father's roots, right? So I understand like where he's coming from with his discipline ways, but I do feel like we really have to interrupt the notion that like it is discipline, because at the end of the day, what happened with me is that my dad put his hands on me. Therefore, I allowed other men to put their hands on me because to me, that was normal, right? I'm like, well, I'm looking for a partner that is kind of like my dad. That's my role model, right? And what I got into was a series of really abusive relationships. I'm a survivor of like attempted murder. Like I jumped out of a window with my daughters, you know what I mean? And I have PTSD starting from childhood. So I think that we have to be, and it's not all it gonna be an extreme like me, right? I think that I do have a very unique case, right? It's not even that unique, let's be real. This happens all the time. Right. But I do feel like so this is a little bit complex because I don't think that as people of color, we have the privilege of being patient because we were working our asses off all the time, right? Yeah. And I feel like if you look at other forms of discipline, they are very time consuming. You can sit there, you have to do timeouts, you have to sit there and explain things to your children in a loving way. It works. Don't get me wrong. I know that it works from experience parenting my kids and being in a privileged position myself now as a PhD student, right? But like, I think that in our communities, not a lot of folks don't have the privilege of like being able to come home and like do these very elaborate disciplinary methods. Like it's easier to use force to keep our children in line.
She looked at me, bro, when she said force. She said to use force, bro.
She knows, bro. She knows.
She knows.
So, because it's easier to use force, like you said, to keep our children in line and controlled to what our versions are of like being a good behaved kid. But what is going on inside that child, right? What are they developing? What are the, like, how are they developing psychologically? What are the messages that we're giving them as we're like beating them up or chanclazos, lo que sea, right? So I think that it's a double-edged sword in a way, but it's also complex. Like, I'm not going to sit here and villainize our community for doing what they do, because I do think that we're not given that, you know what I mean? That time, that privilege, because we're exploited here in this country.
I feel like it's fading away though. So to that note, I feel like the chancla culture is fading away. Like my wife is definitely against it, you know? But like you said, when you start looking back at the way our parents grew up, their parents grew up, I mean, they weren't chanclazos. They were like
cinturonazos.
Yeah, or con un palo, whatever,
con
really.
Los cables.
You know, like my parents grew up in Mexico, so it was a different type of era, you know? So, and as I feel like as they came here, they learned, and then now they passed it on to us. We're learning on how to treat our children, how to educate them, you know? So I feel like it's fading away. And by, you know, I feel like it's just taking time for us to learn. But say bye to the chancla culture, bro. 2040, I think it'll be extinct. You know what I mean?
Well, we'll see. I think it depends.
You think it's coming back?
No, I don't think. I think that for some places it never left. I think that it's always like, it depends geographically where you live. It also depends on, like, I feel like a lot of millennials, right, have kids. Like right now, over 50% of young people under 18 are people of color. So I think that it's just kind of like there's a lot of demographic reality to it. And I just think that that's why there's a shift that we kind of see. But it's funny, you reminded me that I was actually in gym in middle school with your sister. And I will always remember and we always had the same gym class. We'd do a lot of stupid shit in middle school. I remember we were into fainting each other at one point. It was bad. But anyway, no, it was really bad because my dad used to hit me with cables. And like, it was so bad that I would go into the bathroom stall to change because I didn't want the school to get involved, you know? But it reminded me of that. I'm like, oh God, he was in my gym class.
Yeah, see, like that, to me, that's like more like that goes deeper, you know? Like, to me, I feel like my parents, like my mom mostly was on it, like, hey, you know, like, stay aligned, boy. You know what I mean? And then I kind of taught you your place. You're like, okay, she ain't playing, you know? But like you said, that we're fading away from it anyways. Aunque no quiera uno, you're like, I like the way my mom brought me up. Like, we want to kind of stick to it. You fade away because times are changing. So no matter what, you got to move with the times. Go ahead, Checo.
So yeah, I mean, I could probably add on to the whole chancla culture, but I do want to move on because the time is limited. The police and how they reacted to the mass shooting, and your opinion on that. After hearing it, you know, after we're only a week or 2 weeks from when the mass shooting happened.
Semana, no? Apenas una semana, no?
A week and some days.
It happened on a Tuesday, I think. So it's like a weekend. Yeah, like a week and a half.
Okay.
So in the beginning, obviously, there's so many questions, right? Like, how long did it take? Then you find out that it took them 50 minutes, almost an hour to even do anything about it. Or I mean, yeah, they were taking out kids, right? But you know, everybody had the same question, like, why didn't they react sooner? Why didn't they, you know, break down the door? And they probably could have saved a few kids. My opinion now, from learning from what we kind of know, and I say kind of because we don't know for sure, I think they should all be fucking fired. Every police officer that was in there. I mean, it took off-duty border patrol to handle that situation. How do you feel about it?
Damn, that's such a loaded question. So I am, as you probably could tell from my Facebook and my social media, I identify with abolitionist politics, which means that I am against and I am for defunding police in general. I am for defunding military. I'm for defunding every death-making institution in society, and for funding life-affirming institutions like mental health, like childcare, like education, like whatever families need in order to thrive and have joyful existence, right? But to be more specific, like, I'm not surprised about the police reaction. I think that thanks to, particularly, I organize with young people who are Black, who identify as Black in the Black communities. And I've done it enough to know that police are garbage. Like, and all, like, there is, like, I think the Black communities have been telling us, particularly Black organizers have been telling us this for a really long time. But I think that for Latinos, we still, because we find ourselves kind of like in this more privileged place in society in regards to like racism, with the exception of undocumented people, because I think undocumented people do not have much privilege. Yeah. So as far as the cops, yeah, to me, I mean, they did exactly what they were supposed to do. This is what cops do. Like, there is no surprise or shock there for me. Cops, they, and I'm telling you this from my experience, I don't like to make things personal all the time, because I feel like I have done so much research and have reviewed so much literature from a long history, right? So I'm not only, it's like I'm telling you this from two sides, the academic side, but also my personal life. Like, even through my abusive relationships, the cops made it worse and perpetuated the trauma that I was living in my abusive relationships every single time I called them. Okay. And then on the academic side, like, I know for a fact that, data shows nationwide, even globally, how police really fuck up everybody's life. So but I was really pissed off, right? Because the facts already show, right? These are known facts. Like, we're not even, I know you're saying stuff is still coming out. Yeah, we'll wait for more work to come out.
Of course.
Pero these cops went and got their own kids first, right? Like, the fact that they went and got their own kids first. These cops tased and handcuffed parents that were trying to go in and save their kids, right? Mm-hmm. These cops, like, they were so fucked up, like, and it's like, it is very infuriating, I would say, because it's like, even though I'm not surprised by what the cops did, I know I expect the cops to act this way because this is how they always act. Yeah, it was just like, even like there was a one of the things that we organized, me and the young people organized against, there was a campaign to get the cops out of the schools, because, and this is proven fact, right? Cops in schools don't stop shootings, as we could tell from Uvalde and a lot of other examples. Cops in schools, the SRO officers, don't stop shootings. But on top of that, having SRO officers in schools, what they do is incarcerate brown and Black people, particularly Black people. Like, they incarcerate. So let's say you have a detention and you do something that the school can handle, right? They can put you in a room with somebody you had a fight with, figure it out. A cop is there to arrest you, and now you're in the court system, and now you're flagged. So whenever you're not in school, more cops are going to pull you over, and that's why they call it the school to prison pipeline, right? Because it starts in the school with these officers arresting you, and then eventually you end up in prison. So anyway, I think that it's very complex. I don't think that the Border Patrol agent, like, I think as a person, I'm grateful or whatever that this person went in and finally stopped this shooter. But even Border Patrol being on site was fucked up, because you have to remember where we're talking about. We're talking about Uvalde. There's a lot of mixed status families. A lot of parents didn't even show up to look for their kids because they were afraid of getting deported because ICE was on the scene, right? Mm. Does this make our community feel safe, right? Having ICE on the scene. Why are you there, ICE? Why are you there? Like, you have a ton of cops there, like, to handle the situation. I do not understand why ICE was there, right? And so it's very multi-layered. I feel like the response and this is why it makes it so multi-layered, right? This school shooting in particular, like you said, we brought up the shooter. There is a lot of complexity with this, right? The fact that he was a Mexican kid. And then you have the parents being brutalized. But long story short, cops do not value the lives of brown children, and they allowed them to die because their lives were worth more than than saving those kids. At the end of the day, that's
were
what
all
happened.
the cops white?
No. Uvalde has a lot of brown cops. But remember what I told you, like, just because you're brown or black even, black cops kill people all the time. Brown cops kill people all the time. That doesn't mean you're not going to act on what that cop culture is. And cop culture... Oh,
you're saying just as a culture, just...
Yeah, it is white supremacist culture. You know, the police was created... The reason why police exist in the United States, they're originally created to catch enslaved people that would run away. That was their purpose. That is how they were created, because enslaved people were property. The cops are there to protect property. They're not there to save anybody. To them, it's like, it's not worth it. They're not gonna, and especially after it was brown kids, you know. So what I'm trying to say is that even though it was brown, there was brown cops there, they can still act on that internalized, like,
right, just mentally white. Right. I see what you're saying. I mean, I honestly don't want to lose hope. I really hope that there is really good cops out there that do want to protect. Like, that's just my personal thought, you know? I mean,
yeah.
Because if I lose hope on them, I'm like, dang, this is going to hell.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like, that was a quick glimpse of it.
Well, there are other forms of keeping our community safe, right? And I think that that's one thing that we have to kind of problematize a little bit, because I think that we are all kind of socialized to think that cops serve this purpose in society. That's what we're like. I call it propaganda. I don't call it that. I didn't make that term. I learned it. It's called propaganda, right? And it's this like bombarding of like this idea that we think we need cops, right? But in reality, most communities that are safe, the safest communities have the least amount of cops, you know? And I think that we really need to look for alternative ways of keeping each other safe.
The safest communities, when you say that, what communities do you speak of?
So when you look at communities where, there's always a lot of white communities, right? Like a lot of white communities, suburbia, they don't want cops like patrolling their streets. They want like that feeling of having like a utopia, right? Like it's like, these communities are well resourced. Their schools have an immense amount of mental health services. They have special education. They have extracurricular activities. They have sports. Their parents are home doing those really long disciplinary things with their kids, right? So that's what I'm trying to get at. They're well-resourced communities that don't need cops. So if we already know that exists, why are we spending? Uvalde spends 50% of their budget, the city of Uvalde, 50% of their budget on cops. So if instead we use that money for mental health, for extracurricular activities, for intervention, for these homies like the shooter, right? Not to call him a homie. For people like the shooter, right? That like different services that can help intervene, like for better paying jobs for their parents to be able to be home and like parent their children in a way that doesn't involve violence, right? That's how you create safe communities.
So you think a place like Chicago would be better without cops?
Hell yeah. Oh my God, Chicago? Oh, Chicago cops are among the worst.
Well, you said the cops. Well, we're talking about the people as a community.
As a community.
Chicago community is beautiful. I love Chicago community.
We love Chicago community too.
I think that they're two separate topics. The cop budget in Chicago has increased substantially. The violence has increased as well. That tells us that the correlation, this is not working. Why do we continue to throw money at the cops? What does work is resources, right? So again, that's why we have to separate it. Is there a gun problem in our communities? Hell yeah, right? So let's look at that, but let's stop resorting to like we need cops, we need armed teachers, we need more military style cops in the schools. It's like we need to kind of redirect our thinking because it's two different issues. Like I think we've been socialized to automatically think that we need this like cops, military, guns. That's how violence. We always want to fight violence with more violence, right? And it's like, how do we kind of redirect the way that we think about it? And it's like in Chicago specifically, like there is a gun problem. Hell yeah. And I feel like that gun violence doesn't, and that's another thing that like is really frustrating because when we talked about it with the youth, I mentioned to you, I'm an advisor for a youth or a group of youth organizers. A lot of the Black youth were like, yeah, they were telling me, they're like, yeah, we're talking about Uvalde. And they're like, yeah. And also the gun violence in Black communities often gets overlooked and doesn't get talked about as gun violence. It gets talked about as like, oh, Black on Black crime. Oh, like it's messed up. And it's like, no, actually, that's also part of the whole gun violence thing. It also, gun violence is not like this just mass shootings, right?
Right.
It's a very complex thing too, you know? Anyway, I don't know if I answered the question.
Checo, what do you think, bro? I mean, I don't know how Chicago would do without police.
I think it'd be fucking crazy, bro. I think all hell would break loose.
Yes,
but
because of the mentality, right? Of people.
All hell's already loose.
It would be worse.
It would get worse. It would get a lot worse.
That's not true, bro.
Well, well, think about it like this. To me and my brother, I told him, he's like, oh, what is the episode going to be about? And I kind of mentioned that. He's like, dude, I don't know about defunding the police, bro. He's like, the police in Mexico is already defunded, and that ain't fixing things. I mean, and I'm not trying to jump into that, but that's a quick example. Don't get me started on this other topic. But that's a quick example of like the police not having any power or any money. And that ain't working in their favor either. I could see that happening very quickly here, especially in Chicago, since we're here in Chicago. You know what I mean?
I get it, but I hate to do this because with time. Yeah. So go ahead. The last thing I want to bring up is obviously gun control, which you kind of mentioned, or we kind of talked about it a little bit. And obviously that's like a big thing that right now with the mass shooting, it's always been a big thing. Every time there's a mass shooting, everybody talks about gun control. Me, myself, and Compa Noe, I think we're for the Second Amendment. Right? Am I by myself?
when she's not here to ask me.
No, you're good.
No, for sure.
I think I am too, to be honest with you.
Okay. So we agree?
We do agree. Pero mira, but the thing that's funny, and as I always think about this because I think the far right, because I consider myself part of the radical left, and I feel like the far left and the far right have a lot of similarities. Right? You have Black Panthers that were always armed, right? You have a lot of folks that want to stay armed are like alt-right folks and also just right folks. They don't like government. They don't like government. It's similar, but it's for different reasons. ¿Me entiendes? Like I think that so for me, when this question, particularly as it relates to the shootings, the mass shootings, I think that it's very clear. And after a lot of thinking and research and a lot of discussion with the young people, we were like Royal, shout out to Royal. I love them. That's the organization that we work with. Pero we talked about the AR-15, right? Mm-hmm. The AR-15 as a rifle should not be accessible the way it is. I just heard on Sunday night after Sueños, partying my ass off, I heard a mass shooting outside my window. I live right next to Austin. And yeah, there's shootings all the time, right? But like this one was different because first of all, I had never heard a shooting like outside my window like this. But because I could tell there was two different guns. There was an AR-15 style rifle, and then there was a regular gun. A regular gun, when it goes through your body, it makes a narrow hole, right? If you're lucky and it doesn't hit your organs, right? You have a very high chance of survival, even if they shoot you 7 times, right? Like, because it stays like a narrow hole through your body, right? So the bleeding is also less. In AR-15 is like it starts as a narrow hole, but it concaves inside your body. It damages so much tissue that when you go to the hospital, you have 0 chance of survival. And then you're going to have to think about, this is an adult, right? Think about a little kid, bro. They have no chance. Once you're hit with an AR-15, you're going to die because you're going to bleed to death. Not even if they didn't hit your organ, you're going to bleed to death before you can get help. That's what happened to all those kids, right? So I think with gun control, it doesn't have to be black and white. It doesn't have to be yes or no. Not like we have to stop thinking about things in binary, right? Yes, no, whatever. I think that we need to look at the facts of what's happening and talk about AR-15s. AR-15s should not be accessible to people. Why the hell do we need military-style weapons in our communities? For what, right? Yeah, like have a gun, a handgun for your protection. If that makes you feel safer, whatever. I don't really care about that. But I think that AR-15s, we need to have some legislation on AR-15s, which we're not going to have, by the way, because it's just one of those things. So a lot of parents, what they're doing now is that they're suing the gun manufacturers, which I'm curious to see where that's going to go. They're suing the gun manufacturers. I know that the ones on Sandy Hook, they sued Remington. That was a gun manufacturer for that one. And I know that Uvalde parents are now going to sue the gun manufacturer for this one, which I don't remember the name. But like, we have to try different strategies, right? And I don't think that if you are for the Second Amendment, okay, fine. But let's think more critically about then how can we decrease what's happening, right? And I think that banning AR-15s is a first step for sure, right? There's a lot of other stuff that needs to happen, like conflict resolution skills, toxic masculinity, deconstructing, because a lot of folks, right? There's a lot of like jump to violence. I think that's a lot. There's a lot of toxic masculinity in our society. Violence against women, right? The women are like number one victims of gun violence because their partners come and kill them, right? So long story short, I think it's complex and I think we need to be more critical about it. I think that, so that's what I feel about gun control.
Go ahead, Checo.
Let's
just take this one.
Well, definitely not. I think there should be some kind of laws, right, put in place where you can't purchase them at 18. Mm-hmm. I think here in Illinois, I don't think you can buy them at 18. But
I'm not sure if you could buy them. But I know for sure the
right.
checks
Texas,
too, though.
I think you're right because most guns in Chicago come from Indiana.
Yeah, well, they're red, so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But in Texas, I mean, and they're not going to change it, right? You know, they're not going to. They should probably change it to 21 or whatever. But then you have people arguing that if you're 18 and you could join the military, then you're able to, use a gun. But then we could argue about liquor as well. If you're able to join the army, you should be able to enjoy beer.
But what they saying something about the checks too, like how long they keep the rifle before they hand it to the person that's buying it at 18, like making sure they're doing proper background checks. Holding like here, if you buy a gun in Illinois, I believe they hold it for 3 days, and do a proper background check, and before then you could just go pick it up,
Yeah.
So I mean, things like that too would work. But
I don't
I don't think an 18-year-old needs,
right.
You know what I mean,
Right.
an AR-15.
Yeah.
On top of that, maybe they should be focusing on their social media. Like, hey, somebody's buying an AR-15 at 18 years old. The government's already watching us, what we do and what we're saying on social media. Like, why aren't they picking up on certain things like this? Especially when somebody's buying an AR-15, a background check is being done on this person. Hey, how about we run through the social media, see what's going on? I mean, sounds like a lot of work, but we probably have the resources.
Yeah, but
you know what I mean?
What I will say counter to that, because I do think I don't want to get us to get too caught up in the background stuff, because at the end of the day, you have to remember that most people who have a record are black and brown people. Okay, so that would mean that a lot of black and brown people will not have access to guns. Also, a lot of people talk about people with mental illness. I wouldn't be able to get it. I have PTSD. But shit, I want one maybe,
Right.
So I think that, and at the end of the day, like.
So if you've been diagnosed, you've been diagnosed, you can't buy, like a PTSD, you can't buy a gun?
No, because that legislation doesn't exist. You're trying to pass it.
Hey, I'm just speaking my thoughts. I'm trying to prevent more school shootings.
So you think, you know what I'm saying? So that's what I want.
That's hard. I mean, it's hard. Yeah,
that's what I want you to see.
That's good. That's good. Yeah,
I think that people that have so then people will not come out with their mental health issues, and they will be reluctant to go to therapy, and then we're gonna go backwards in our. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
So it's like I think that we need to. The background checks and the mental health stuff too, that we don't want to stigmatize people with mental health stuff. We just do not. I think that's why I feel like the ban on AR-15s is a good start, because at least if some fucking psycho goes and shoots people, they have a higher chance of survival because they're not gonna die.
Oh man, so that's a tough one for me because I don't know if I would lean more towards come in and shoot with just a handgun. On top of the fact that if that person is really gonna come in and shoot, does not mean that they can get the AR-15 elsewhere.
Yes.
So I would rather people get a proper background check and get stigmatized by whatever's going on. But I would prefer that happen than just the criminal would go and get the gun elsewhere and do the shooting anyways. So that's where I would lean on that. Yeah. Just because you brought that up, I'm like, that's
you're gonna get it regardless.
But that wouldn't prevent. But what you're saying would never have prevented Uvalde shooter. He had a clean background. No arrest. It would never prevented the Buffalo shooter. He had a clean background. That's what I'm telling you.
Maybe looking into his social media before releasing the gun.
But that's not...
You know what I mean? Like
something
more of a thorough.
Maybe they'll listen to our podcast. I don't know. They'll be like, you know what? Social media before you buy a gun is probably a good idea. You know what? This guy looks like a white supremacist. How about we hold off?
They don't give a this whole.
We don't know.
No, they don't. They're not looking for white supremacy. There's a thing, bro. Like the thing that y'all have to understand is that white supremacy controls this. They're not gonna go after white supremacists. That's never gonna happen because they're going to go after fucking Arabs. They're going to go after Muslims. They're going to go after Mexicans. They're going to go after the black community. That's who is going to end up losing if we do those policies. They're never going to go after white supremacists.
Right.
They're not, because that's what
So like to me, I like to stay right in the middle. You know, like I don't want to go too far left. I don't want to go too far right. I feel like that if you're a law-abiding citizen, you're probably going to be good, you know? Like for the most part, you know what I mean? Like, what like you looking at me like, nah, you ain't.
False information.
That's just the way I feel, though. That's just the way I feel. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that it's right. I'm not saying that it's right. But I just, you know what I mean? Like you said, I'm a radical. You know, once you say that, I'm like, damn, like
I'm on the radical left. I say that and I understand and I hear you, but I feel like so laws even, right? Mm-hmm. Laws were created by a white supremacist society. And if you look at the laws, there's this really good book called The Color of Law. So y'all know that I'm actually not talking out of my ass. That literally will go through the entire history of U.S. lawmaking and show you how racist it is. So for me, the law ain't a thing. The law is not morality to me because I see how the law has been designed, who it fucks up. And look at who it's just like certain things, like undocumented people are unlawful, right? Their existence in this country is unlawful. The law does not guide morality, is what I'm trying to say.
I agree with that 100%.
So even if you are a law-abiding citizen, homie, and you're black or brown, you're still going to go down.
Wait, if you commit a crime.
No.
What do you mean?
Okay,
give me an example.
So I'll give you an example. Okay,
like,
so for example, like right before I came here, I was like looking at Facebook and like people get racially profiled. Let's just do like one of the most talked about examples, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I just talked to you guys about the school to prison pipeline, right?
Yes.
You're in school, you're a child, you have a beef with your classmate, y'all fight, it becomes a crime. Because you're in a school that has SROs, the school resource officers, right? The cops in the schools. Go to a white school. You have a beef with your classmate. You get in a fight. It's not a crime because there is no SROs there. And it's not considered a crime. As a child, they're developing. It's normal. This is part of their healthy adolescence, right? So it's like you have to see it for what it is. It's like when you're black and brown, everything, most things that you do is a crime, and when you're white, it's not really a crime, homie. Like,
I get that part, but I would hate to live that way. You know, like to always have to think like that. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't do that.
I don't think you have a choice, though. I mean, I don't want to live like that either.
To me,
right.
I see your point about but that starts at home, though. You know, you have a kid that has it goes to school where there's a cop there. It's your job as a parent to make sure that
he makes sure that the cop don't see him doing healthy things that a child should do, like have conflict with his friend.
I don't know about a fight. I don't know. I don't think that a fight is healthy. I mean, we talked about violence is not the answer, right?
Absolutely, but I think that there are
to me, it's like that's what I think.
Absolutely, but you can't. There's always, when you're developing as a child, you're gonna make mistakes. Like that's off the table. No child is perfect. All children make mistakes. Correct. Children will try drugs. Children will have sex. Children will fight with each other. This is adolescence, man. I was no angel when I was in high school, right? But I think that now looking back, I see that I was an adolescent, which has lived through a lot of trauma, right? Who was making these mistakes. I got arrested when I was 13 in Indian Trail for a gang activity. I got arrested and I was put on probation. It was a felony charge, aggravated battery. And looking back at it, how I was treated by these cops and how they interrogated me without my parents there, like that should not happen to a child, especially without their parents there, right? And the thing is that this is happening to children, especially Black and brown children in society, far more than we think it is, right? Like, and that's my thing. It's like you have to understand that like there is systemic racism that is at the core of policing. And as much as we like it or we don't want to believe it and it makes us feel sad and stuff, like it is the truth. I think that there is joy still. Like I find joy in the organizing world. I find joy in restorative justice. I find joy with the young people that I'm with every week. And we find alternative ways of dealing with conflict. We practice peace circles. We practice conflict resolution. I'm about to do one next week, right? These are the alternatives. I'm doing this shit for free, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe they give me some of that fucking cop money, I could do a bigger change. I could make more impact, ¿me entiendes? But guess who's not funded? Not these type of things, right? Those type of things are funded, right? So like that's the thing that's like, I think we really need to be critical about the core of conflict, the core of violence more, and how we can address that instead of like jumping to like the violence as a response to violence. ¿Me entiendes?
No, I get it. I understand 100%. I follow.
I think we gotta cut it off.
Oh, for real? I gotta go party now.
That's why we gotta cut off. You're on a time limit, so man. I just want to tell you thank you for coming on, and hopefully this won't be the last time. Hopefully you'll accept another invitation.
Yeah, I usually charge $600 an hour.
This will be the last time.
I did it for free because your brother's my homie, pero it's my rate. No, I'm just kidding. Pero this was fun. Like you do that for works type stuff. But yeah, I love being here. I hope that I did not disappoint.
No, not at all. Not at all. You had me like this the whole time. I was like, man, what is going on right now? That's dope. I mean, to me, I like to hear everybody's opinions.
No, mine's is facts.
Yeah, facts.
I almost got a PhD behind me. You gotta call me Dr. Cynthia Brito.
We got you, and we're proud of you too.
And I do that shit to have more legitimacy because I feel like, I mean, at the end of the day, that you need those fucking degrees to.
Well, make sure you message us when you get it, so I could be like, "What's up, doctor?"
I will. Crossing fingers.
Yeah, for sure.
You want to give out any shout outs or anything, any last words or anything like that?
Last word. Damn, ya me voy a morir.
Before we end the pod, not your life.
Hey, so that's going to be the last time he uses that phrase.
Yeah, no, I'm not using that anymore.
No, bro, last word, no. I'm going to shout out the youth organization that have taught me a lot. Royal, my daughters who are activists, organizers, my 19 and 17 are both in Royal and they're baddies. Like they are constantly fucking shit up. And I'm glad because that's how I raised them. Shout out to my husband because I have to shout out my husband. He allows for me to come here. He's taking care of our kids. So thanks to him. But yeah, thank you for having me. Shout out to AT. What's up, Blazers?
Blazers.
Damn. Man. Really appreciate you coming out.
Yeah, it was a drive, but I'm glad I came. I wanted to. So
and we're glad you're here. So I think this is it. Unless you have any last words. Other than that, thank you guys for listening and for watching. This is Compas Unfiltered. Peace.